TopMedTalk.
This piece is called Leading a Large Multi-State Group to Achieve Excellence. It's presented by Dr. Brian Woods, Anesthesiologist and Vice President at NorthStar Anesthesia.
I want to say this, as I sit through the afternoon, it's been great hearing from Mike and from Liz and everybody about the processes. And one of the things that's a little bit interesting about the real nature of how these conferences go is you've got a lot of people that come and they're very honest. It's really hard to do what we're talking about doing. And so I want to encourage you to continue with courage. Do not come to these talks and listen to us who have got some war stories and some skins on the wall and some experiences that have been really difficult and take that as a reason to walk away and say, well, it's too hard. I don't think I can try. The moral of the story, and you'll hear it from every one of the speakers today, tomorrow, and Sunday, is you have to get in the game and you have to get in the fight. And you can't wait until it's all perfect. You've got to get started. And so you're going to hear some of those things in this talk here. I think the topic that was given was a multi-state, large national group pursuing excellence. I'm going to tell you a little bit about NorthStar's approach to how we handle this topic and how we're trying to accomplish it. I think the only real differences you're going to hear in some of the stories is we talk about it when we have to do it on scale. We have to do it in a commercial environment. We have to do it in a financially charged environment. So you're going to hear some of those tenets. As you listen to those things, I would encourage you to take away from that part. If you don't understand the financial tie to what it is you're trying to lead, change, or teach in your facility, you'll have significantly less impact. You must be able to speak to your surgeon colleagues, to your own colleagues, to your administrators. You must be able to speak to them from the realm of finance, because at the end of the day, and this will be a punchline at the end of the talk, it all comes down to the bottom line. If you want to get done what you want to get done, the reason you're in this room and having this conference, you must be able to connect those dots. So with that, I'm going to jump ahead. This is the disclosure thing. I'm going to talk about some partnerships we have that were just mentioned. I'm going to talk a little bit about PreOp. I want you to be very clear. I often get accused is too strong, but people often say, you're so passionate about X, Y, or Z, you must be getting paid by those guys. And I want to be very clear to date, myself nor any of the folks on our team have any financial relationships to any of the things that we're partnering with on this endeavor. So I just want to state that very clearly up front, and we'll cover some of those relationships here in just a minute. We're going to talk a little bit about NorthStar, who we are, give you a little bit of perspective on what we're dealing with in our company, a little bit of our history and some of the things that have affected our ability to do enhanced recovery and some of the changes that we've recently gone through. And then you're going to hear me talk a lot about data, not data in 14% and 82.3% and all that, but the importance and need of your data. I think there was a slide in here. There it is. Originally, I had this talk envisioned a little bit different and was going to involve several members of my team. To be very clear, if you're ever part of NorthStar, you're going to know it's never about one individual, period. It's always about the team. And for us, that comes in our relationships with colleagues and our physicians, our relationships with our CRNAs, and our ability to work together. But my role today happens to be, I get to stand up here and tell you a little bit about our history. But in our company, the goal is always more important than the role. And so I'm honored to get up here and speak. But any of I think we have 30 or so folks from our team here from around the country, from I see West Virginia back here and Tennessee and Kentucky. Any of our folks could probably get up here and give this talk today. But I'm honored to do it and thankful that our team is here to participate. So here's a little bit of facts about NorthStar. We're a mega group or a big group. Here's the timeline and the number of facilities and things that we've had across the bottom. We're currently operating in 20 states. You can see here where most of our case volume and revenue flows across these different states, mainly in Texas, Michigan, and Ohio. But then, of course, we're in all those other places. And you might be wondering, why in the world are you showing us facility counts? Because as big groups get bigger, there's a lot of different influences that come to bear on the group, on the leaders, on the people in the group, and the things that we're faced with doing. So I joined this company in 2007, over there when we had 9 facilities. We got to go through a lot of different phases of growth. And then in 2013, we got to experience our first round of private equity. Now, it was a private equity round for just a very, very small number of people, myself not included. But what happened is you see this little section in the middle, 2013, 2017. You see a tremendous amount of growth, but it was a time that we were answering to a different driver and a different mentality for our group than maybe what we as clinicians want to be led by sometimes. And I'm being extremely transparent here, but sometimes the pressure for growth and numbers and financial returns and all those kind of things, when those things are pushed too hard, the mission of that growth comes ahead of the mission of other things. And I want to speak very clearly for us. You're going to hear in a minute, I met Monty the first time, I think in 2015, and had a trip to London, and we got really excited about that, the vision of what we could do with perioperative medicine and enhanced recovery here at NorthStar. But we also hit that right about the peak of all of our contracts. If you're studying the graph curve, you might be going, well, what, y'all were big, now you're smaller. Let me speak very directly to that. Sometimes when you're growing, and you're growing for growth's sake, you grow to grow. But you don't grow because it's good business for yourself, your company, your team, or your patients. And so one of the big things that happened in our company in 2017 was we went through and did a right sizing, if you will, of our company. It was a very difficult season. It affected a lot of people. And those things are also forces that affect what's going on in healthcare in our world. But I wanted to highlight that to say one of the big things that happened after we got through that right sizing is we were blessed, and I mean that word in all the senses of whatever it means to you, to have a new capital partner come and be a part of us last year. And so we got what's called a long-term capital partner. It's in the form of a company called Cranemere. But instead of buying a company, hoping in 3 years it can go 3x, they can flip it, turn it, make the bottom right cell on a spreadsheet be really big. Instead of doing that, this company that's invested in us has invested for the next 20 to 30 years. And so it has absolutely changed the paradigm by which we can talk about investments in enhanced recovery, technology, systems, leadership, training, the things that we have to have in order to advance the cause and to do our part with all of the things that you are trying to do here in the room. So you're going to hear a lot about that as we move forward, but this is a little bit about the size and scale of NorthStar. And when we're trying to solve for enhanced recovery, we've got to come up with things that do that. This is just a slide to show you that we've worked with a lot of people, been in a lot of different situations, worked with a lot of technical people. I always say this, but that doesn't mean we know more than anybody else. It just means we've had enough chance to screw it up with a lot of other people. And on that screen, you see for-profit, not-for-profit, small critical care access hospitals, large trauma centers. In our experience, what we've gained is experience. And what we're doing is learning from that and applying it to our future. I put this slide up here just because a lot of people, as I travel the country and get to meet with them, a lot of people have different beliefs about how these mega groups make money and how we actually do things. One of the things that we hear at NorthStar, we're fairly pro-team and pro-CRNA and pro-care team and so forth. One of the things we hear all the time is, y'all must come in, get a contract, fire all the doctors, hire a bunch of CRNAs, and that's how you make money. And I just want you to know, when it comes to the practice of anesthesia and trying to instill change, that's not actually true. Never has been true about our company. In fact, you see here 4 different types of models. Just very quickly, so you know when you hear what we're talking about with enhanced recovery, 87% of our practice cases that we do every year are in a medically directed model with an average of 1 to 2.7 CRNAs being supervised by the physicians. But in our company, we do have all physician models. I think we have some of our docs here from some of those models out in Lubbock. And the only reason I bring that up is, 1, to disavow the disbelief, but 2, when you're employing and putting into new practices, policies, things you're going to do for the preparation, the care, and the delivery of patients, it's different in different models. It's caused us to stretch and do things in a different way in different facilities and where we're practicing. Starting with the macro on the economics. I'm proud to be an American, proud of all the things that we do. This curve has always been one that's really hard for us to figure out. We say we're the best and all those kind of things, but that one obviously is not sustainable. We all know that. We know that's the macro driver here. But with one of those not being the same, one of the things that's come out over the last 6 to 7 years as we talk about all the advances in healthcare is we're supposed to solve this equation. And it's not just us that's supposed to solve this equation. It's the hospital administrators we're working with. It's the CEO who's afraid he's going to lose his job on a decision. It's the surgeons that are trying to solve these same equations for ourselves. And so one of the things that's in the premise of what we do at NorthStar is we believe that we have to help solve this part of the equation, but it's got to be done in the right way. The art of that is the real crux of what we're trying to solve here. But what I want to share with you is some of the philosophies by which we approach scaled deployment of ERP in NorthStar, and then explain to you how I think those things can be informative and hopefully helpful on our greater cause to help the most people in the long run. What's in a name? Semantics matter. That's been said many times today. Literally, these slides that I'm showing you right here, these are all often the same slides we're showing to our administrators and to our surgeons and to our other people that we're trying to get bought into the understanding of this. And there's a lot of confusion once you get outside of the circle of people that want to come to these conferences about what all this means. And so we walk through all of that. In NorthStar Anesthesia, we don't call it the perioperative surgical home. We don't call it any of those things. We actually call it the perioperative continuum. And I'll explain more about that in just a second. In the macro forces of healthcare, there's this whole trying to move from, volume to value. There's a lot of different people out there trying to write prescriptions of how we bean count and turn in data and try to figure out what all of it is. Nobody has an answer for the value piece, but these are the major drivers, and all of you are facing those particular drives out there. The government is hoping in many different ways to try to solve and get that equation that we looked at before improved. We got to increase the access and do more. We got to increase the quality, but we got to be able to somehow control that red line that's out of control. With this particular approach, bundle payments were in, then they were going to go away. Now they're talking about them coming back. And so there's ever changing the rules on the playing field. Your approach and your system for whatever you're doing in your group or your town or your academic center, all of those things have to be understood. But it's not just the government side payers that are trying to get all this under control. All of the other major private payers are also trying to say the same thing and do the same thing. You've seen the value of these things coming up, and for many of you in the room, maybe like us at NorthStar, we're beginning to have those negotiated conversations with those private payers to say, how do we control cost in the long run by maximizing the value that we get for providing you value in your care? And so it doesn't matter which part of the country you're in right now, all of the payers and all of the pressures in healthcare are trying to get this solved. And so we believe we've got to be a part of trying to solve that equation for them. As we go around the country, because of our size and the number of places we get to go work with, we found that there's just, an evolution of different drivers for what health systems and health partners are looking for right now. And it typically starts down here on the bottom. We get invited into a town or we get invited into a health system conversation. And the number one thing that most hospitals say is, we love you. They're awesome. They do great clinical care. That's all good. We just need you to save us some money, right? And so it's a really hard driving thing, but most hospitals start here. The next step of evolution is a health system says, not only do we want you to turn off our immediate subsidy costs, but we would like you to actually, can you help us standardize systems, reduce waste, and get those things under control? This is your first leverage for negotiating value. If you can help with that, then that's possible. The next step of evolution is there's actually measurement and dashboards, and they've got some reporting systems, they've got data, and they're actually using that data to affect the care that we're delivering and helping to hold down that cost. The next evolution is some hospitals, very few, are finally at the point where they're talking about what is the outcome of our patient experiences and our patient processes. Very few health systems are at that level, but where we believe everything is headed is population health in the perioperative space. And I know that's a simple concept now, but 2 or 3 years ago, that was not the way many people were talking. And so what we did is we built our model to say, how do we start solving for population health, large scale numbers of insured bodies or covered bodies in health systems in order to try to help with our scale and the economy of what we do in our delivery. So for us, these are the 4 keys that we think must be instilled into a system or a team in order to affect change on the perioperative system level or the perioperative continuum. To get from where we are today to where we need to be, we think there has to be a change in the way that we approach management style. We think there has to be a change in the science, much of which we talk about in these conferences here. 3, there has to be a change in the technological approach to what we're doing. I think this is one of the things on scale that's going to be most helpful over the course of time of solving, well, we didn't get the results we were looking for. We weren't just real sure. It didn't really work out. Our funding only lasted so long, and therefore it stopped. I think technology is a place that we're going to have to lean, and we'll show you that in a minute. And then 4, we believe you got to have the right cultural attitude and be willing to lead cultural change, not just lead science and technology changes. And so for us, those are the 4 keys. I'm just going to unpack those really quick. Great quote by Bernard Shaw. It's important, but you can't change anything unless you can do it yourself. And then you can start asking other people to do it. And so important. Very quickly, just going to talk you through our management style. You've seen this in many forms, and it's part of the conversation around the perioperative home. But at NorthStar, we teach and encourage our teams to think about our role being more of the perioperative style physician, not just considering what's going on in what we call phase 4, putting patients to sleep and waking them up, but we need to get involved informatically with patient engagement and patient strategies at the time of operative decision, and in some cases before that, through these 7 phases, which all of you in the room know, all the way through 90 days post-discharge. And our process, our operational playbook is always focused on how do we affect patient experience and patient outcome as we go through that continuum. In our playbook, in each of these phases, we know and have learned there are systems and plays and processes that we can run that help patient experience and outcome. There's a large number of those that when you run them well, they actually affect the hospital's bottom line, which affects your relationship with them to have further conversations. But what we've also learned is between pre, intra, and post-operative systems in all of the various health system logos that you saw before, it's a tremendous amount of beating to deal with all the technological processes out there. Interoperability is talked about all the time. It is nowhere near current state. And so what we've done is had to work with technological partners to try to get around these limitations in that particular process. This is our management philosophy. To that, we've also got to add the science. Now, everybody here knows where that came from, and I met Monty in a place in Detroit early 2015 and started learning that, wait, there's actually data and stuff that proves, and first got that bug of hope that we could actually do something with the science. Later that year, we actually traveled to London and spent some time and went and traveled and started talking to people that were actually feeding them in the PACU. And this young lady in the chair is over here playing Sudoku, but she had a right hemiocolectomy the afternoon before. Right? And this totally blew our mind when we started seeing evidence of what the science and the change and all the great things that happened in the initial years of this particular program there. But we brought all of the science back here and we started trying to figure out how we could implement it on scale for our processes. And what we figured out, it's really hard. It's really hard, right? It's really hard to do it once, much less talk about doing it across 143 different facilities at one time. And so from the science, I'm not going to spend any more time on that. I do want to spend just a second on technology. This is just a very quick snapshot of our particular company and all the different sectors of what we do in the company and the multiple electronic systems that we have in one company. And for us, we had to go through a large burst of energy just to get our own information inside of our own facilities and our own teams figured out. What we figured out first was our clinical billing and quality data was a significant portion of what we needed to accomplish when it came to this particular conversation. And so we started partnering with companies, namely PreOp. And so I'm going to just put this up here for just a second, but this is our approach to trying to solve on a macro scale all of the different inputs that are needed. I started out my career in the early 2000s believing that AIMS, or the system that we do in the operating room, was going to be the solution for all of this. And what I learned as we grew and we scaled and we started realizing there's 15,000 AIMS and you don't get to pick which one you want, we had to have a different process by which we could sample quality data. And so for us, we started sipping most of that data in the post-recovery period there in phase 5 for us and doing it through an Anesthesia Valet app that allows us to report quality and data at that point. Since that point, we deployed all of that in 2016 for the first time and got that enterprise-wide. We have since been working on our informatic portals and our connectivity for all of the billing processes that you have to go through, all of the clinical things that have to be accomplished here, and then all the quality reporting that you have to do post-fact. It is my hope, and I'm putting it on hope because I don't have definitive data to represent that all of this is possible, but it is my hope that as we build systems that are looking at the same data points on every single anesthetic delivered by a team of over 2,600 people on a regular basis, that as we start learning more from the studies that Liz is doing or that Mike's doing or other things, we'll know exactly which variables to tweak, but we'll already have a petri dish and a milieu where we can actually go play and tweak it and then see it move on scale. And so for us, this has become our approach and what we're trying to solve to get our data and to accomplish those three particular goals. Finally, I don't think I need to spend too much time on this, but if you're not capable and aware that you need to go lead conversations and, in fact, direct change with each of the groups here, results are not possible for you. If you want to just change yourself, that's easy. If you want to go change your colleague who actually works with you as a partner, that's easy. Go start talking to the PACU nurses and go start talking to the pre-op nurses and go start talking to the surgeons' office managers who actually put in all the orders for them and actually trying to train them how to do medicine. It's a really, really hard task. But if you're not committed to doing that and then trying to bring all those people to the middle, you're going to have a really hard result. So very quickly, 5 key takeaways, lessons learned as we've tried to start going around the scale. 1, great can be the enemy of good. This is raising my hand personally, and my team's probably snickering at me, but I've always got grandiose and big visions. But at the end of the day, you don't have time to go build the Taj Mahal, as some of my guys say. You got to just get after it and get started. And so for us, getting started meant starting at Tenet Healthcare and going to the DMC and just getting a program around orthopedics kicked off and get our first set of data. And that, thankfully, we were able to do that at the end of 2016. Number two, when you've done one, you've done one. Despite being all under the same brand and we all wear the same logo on our shirt and we all believe the same things and we try to adhere to some of those principles I just told you, it doesn't matter, because when you've done one, you've done one. And you got to take all the principles and go apply them in a different way in a different town. I'll tell you about that in a minute. Three, this is Bob Booth's quote, "It ain't clean. It's like mud wrestling. You wish you could come give a nice talk. All the people would come down to the front after the sermon. Everybody be on a spiritual high. You'd go back to the hospital and everybody be marching in step and no, right? You open it, most people shrug you off, and then you get in the mud and you wrestle out all the details for a long period of time." Number four, leadership is still the number one ingredient. Period. End of story. If you don't have it, you need to go get it. If you can't find it, it's going to be really hard. And so for us, I'm going to talk to you about what we're doing on that. And then, as I said earlier, it always comes down to the bottom line. 2018 for us, just getting started as we did the reset with Crane Mirror and all the things that I was talking about earlier, is just go assess where we at. All the 150 something places that we're at right now. And when we did our sample, I was pleased, honestly, to see that we had 51% of all of our facilities either engaged or actively engaged in some sort of enhanced recovery in our programs. That didn't mean that everybody was publishing papers and doing all that. And to be very honest, of those, all of the 51, I guess, or 55, no, 58, I only had 4 that were actually documented on protocols, doing the whole thing, had the data, and had some type of reporting on the backside. But that's 4, and that's better than where we thought we were going to be. But we began moving forward from there. We then, across those surveys, you'll see these are the different types of service lines and the approaches. By far and away, the most engagement we had was from orthopedics. But you can see these service lines that we had coming into Q3 of 2018 across there. Incorporating the protocols, you've got to build the tools and you've got to have the systems. I totally understand at an individual level, it's much harder to get those things accomplished. But what we thought going into it was, we'll write a protocol. We'll email protocol to all people. All people will take protocol and put it into place. And it's absolutely not possible, right? And we learned that very, very quickly. Local law always prevails. Jim's part of the talk was going to be right here, and he's going to talk about Lubbock, Texas, and John Furby and all the great things that they're doing out there. But at the end of the day, if you can't adjust your principles and your means to get to your results, you're going to have a hard time trying to do it on this scale. I'm going to skip this slide just in the interest of time, and I want to move on to this particular topic of leadership. We recognize we've got great leaders. I'm so proud of the physicians and CRNAs that are in this room and the ones that are around the country that couldn't be here this weekend. I believe we have the greatest team of all leaders in all the groups. I'm only the 4th largest anesthesia group in the country, but I would put our leadership team up against anybody in any of the other major companies. But we also know that's not enough. And so through relationship with Monty and Saul and Mike and some others, we've been talking for a couple years now, but we finally just about 2 months ago inked the final contracts on the ability to start the first Morpheus fellowship for perioperative management and an anesthesia management fellowship from here. It's going to be a great endeavor. We're going to kick it off this fall. We've modified a few things. We're going to kick it off with 6 of our current leaders to try to do the pilot year. So we're going to have 3 of our current national CMOs and then 3 local regional leaders be involved in that particular program. I think I'm going to go ahead and say this. It's currently first year iteration and pilot going to be a physician-only program. NorthStar has other intents down the road with that, and I'll leave it at that. But it's really important to us that we pour the right leadership and training on the science, the culture, and the technology, and all the things that you have to know in order to execute these programs. We get that into as many folks as we can. Very excited about all the partnership and our continued participation here at EdPalm. But without the leaders that you need in these programs, it's going to be really difficult. If any of you have interest in being a part of a fellowship like this or a phase of your life or career where something like this might be interesting, please come see me or any of the other CMOs that are here with us from NorthStar. And then finally, it all comes down to the bottom line. And so I would encourage all of you, if you don't understand the basic economics of what's going on in your contract and your approach and your negotiations with your facility, you need to learn what the 4 basic buckets of value are in the process of negotiating any deal related to anesthesia. There's 2 sources of revenue in our world. There's two sources of expenses. The expenses, of course, are all of us, right? Supply and demand curve is in our favor. There's not enough of us around the world right now. And so job and pay and all that's available, right? At the end of the day, there has to be overhead fees. At NorthStar, they call that management fees. But in your own group or your own practice, it's how you guys pay for your med mal and your credentialing and all those kind of things. But if you don't understand, you're going to propose something, and if it affects one of those two things, you've got to understand how you've got to go to the table and negotiate that. One of the things that's most glorious thing for those of us in anesthesia is we've been a double income, double revenue business for the last 30 plus years. If you don't understand the variable of what subsidy and the hospital's expectations for that cost variable are and how they view that variable, and you go in talking about wanting to raise the expenses on anything, and you can't solve for their value equation there, you will not get something done. It's one of the lessons we've had to learn on scale. But I don't say that to say anything other than if you can't tie it to the bottom line, your chances of success are going to go way down. And so in every part of your business, your group, your practice, whatever that is, learn the financial portions of your business so that you have a better chance to accomplish the outcomes for patients that you're looking for. Those are the 5 lessons learned. Those are just a few quick tidbits about some of the things we think about from NorthStar. But we think that if we can affect change on these 4 things, we might contribute to the betterment of what we're trying to do for patient care overall. So that's all I got. Thank you.
Nick Majerison here. Thank you for listening to TopMedTalk. Now, make sure you've subscribed to TopMedTalk on your podcatcher or however it is that you're listening to us at the moment. And you're spoilt for choice. We're on pretty much every single podcast platform you could think of. So make sure you've subscribed. Make sure you've engaged with us on social media, Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube. And make sure you've signed up for our email updates on topmedtalk.com. If you get yourself there, you'll find a website that contains all of the podcasts that we've ever done, and it gives you the chance to sign up for our email updates. That way we can always get in touch with you and tell you what we're up to. Oh, and while you're online, check out ebpom.org/meetings. While you're there, get excited about EBPOM London 2019, the London Perioperative Medicine Congress. It's on July the 2nd, and it's one of many meetings that EBPOM organises around the world in order to communicate the perioperative medicine message. Have a look, ebpom.org/meetings.